Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one. The introduction. The small coastal town of Ravenswood had always harbored a sense of stillness, its views punctuated by the rhythmic crashing of waves against jagged rock. Nestled along the fog-blanketed shoreline, it thrived under the presiding winds that whispered tales of the sea into the ears of weary travelers. But beneath this placid facade lay a grudging history, echoed in the glances exchanged among neighbors and the faintest undercurrents of mistrust. In the spring of 1997, Ravenswood's tranquility was shattered when the body of 36-year-old Clara Jensen was discovered washed ashore. She had been a beloved teacher at the local high school, known for her passion and care for her students. Yet, as the sea cradled the lifeless form, it offered no answers. Clara's absence reverberated through town, leaving a haunting emptiness that left everyone wondering, who would want to harm someone so dear? Detectives pored over Clara's last known whereabouts, tracing her movements through a kaleidoscope of mundane routine. Her last sighting was at the town's only grocery store, just a few blocks down the main street, a simple errand that unraveled into a mystery. Friends and acquaintances found themselves under scrutiny, their subtle truths and underlying tensions surfacing to complicate the investigation. As days turned into weeks, the fog did not just linger on the outskirts of town. It enveloped the case, leaving investigators and townsfolk alike grasping for clarity amidst shadows that felt darker than ever. The victim. Clara Jensen was more than just a name to the townspeople of Ravenswood. She was an integral thread in the fabric of their community. With her radiant smile and boundless enthusiasm, she had dedicated a decade of her life teaching English and literature at Ravenswood High. Her classroom was a haven for students struggling with self-doubt, where she encouraged creativity and critical thinking. Yet on the surface, Clara appeared to live a life of solitude. Friends remembered her as someone whose kindness was often paired with a quiet reserve. Despite her extensive network of students and acquaintances, Clara rarely opened up about her personal life. It wasn't until after her death that layers of her past began to unfurl, revealing complexities often hidden beneath her amiable demeanor. Colleagues conveyed that Clara had been particularly pensive leading up to the tragedy. She confided in a fellow teacher about feeling overwhelmed by the demands of her job and the weight of expectations both from her students and herself. Unbeknownst to many, she had also been navigating the rocky shores of a tumultuous relationship with an estranged partner whose erratic behavior had left unsettling ripples in her life. As the investigation unfolded, family members shared the complexity of Clara's world. Her untimely death, still shrouded in controversy, felt like the final note in an unfinished symphony. It was clear that to understand the tragedy, one would have to dive deeper into the enigmatic life of Clara Jensen, a woman whose story was far richer than it initially appeared. The crime scene. The discovery of Clara's body sent shockwaves through Ravenswood. But it was the crime scene that strained the very essence of the town's collective conscience. The rocky shore, where her lifeless form lay nestled among the tide, was both a haunting backdrop and a place of solitude echoing the tumultuous secrets that rippled beneath the surface. Detectives arrived on site, immediately noting the stark contrast of the serene coastline and the gravity of the scene. Clara was dressed in the same vibrant floral dress she'd worn days earlier, its patterns blooming brightly against the muted grays and browns of the earth. There were no visible signs of struggle, nor any belongings scattered around her. As if she had slipped seamlessly from her world into the depths of the sea. The tide carried a salty aroma, mingling with the heavy weight of tranquility and tumult, creating an atmosphere that felt unnaturally serene for such a horrific discovery. Searching for prints, officers combed over the area, looking for fingerprints on rocks or signs of a scuffle in the surrounding sand. The gentle lapping of waves was a constant reminder that time was moving forward. Yet here, everything was frozen. One life extinguished, leaving only questions in its wake. As investigators sifted through evidence, small details began to emerge that hinted at darker possibilities. An uncharacteristic bruise on Clara's wrist suggested she might have had a struggle before entering the water, while a nearby bottle of prescription medication raised alarms about a potential overdose. Layers of uncertainty folded over one another, challenging the narrative of drowning and inviting speculation that perhaps her death was more than a mere accident. The early investigation. As the sun rose over Ravenswood, the reality of the previous night's events began to settle in for the investigators at the local precinct. They gathered evidence, carefully compiling reports and statements from anyone who had crossed paths with Clara in the days leading to her devastating fate. With each conversation, they attempted to separate the threads of truth from the tangled web of human emotion. First on their list was Tom Carter, the grocery store manager who had seen Clara the afternoon before she disappeared. He described her as distracted and restless, her vibrant personality dimmed behind a veil of uneasiness. She wandered the aisles, picking up items but discarding them without a second thought. The detectives noted Tom's nervous fidgeting and asked him about Clara's relationships. His avoidance of the question raised more eyebrows than answers. Next, they turned to Clara's closest friend, Sarah Miles. Sarah painted a portrait of a woman burdened with secrets. Clara had spoken to her about feeling watched, though she never specified by whom. Their conversation lingered in the air of the small cafe where they routinely met, the scent of freshly brewed coffee intertwining with their shared worries. It became apparent that Clara felt trapped by forces beyond her control, a sense of dread that robbed her of the joy she once exuded. Meanwhile, the detectives worked through Clara's cell phone records and social media, chasing down leads that took them into the murky waters of her online life. Messages exchanged with her estranged partner hinted at volatility, with exchanges swinging from affectionate to hostile in mere text. As pieces of Clara's life converged, it became increasingly clear that this was more than a tragic accident. It was the unraveling of a life steeped in complexity, opening doors to a myriad of possible suspects and motive. The dead ends. Weeks passed since Clara's body was found, yet the investigation appeared stuck, as if caught in a web spun by shadows. Every lead seemed to dissipate just as quickly as it emerged, leaving behind a trail of frustration for the detective. Despite their diligent digging, crucial answers eluded them, and the townsfolk's once supportive whispers began to morph into quiet speculation. The detectives pursued Clara's estranged partner, Marcus Green, a man whose stormy relationship with Clara had been a focal point from the start. They expected to find a wealth of incriminating evidence, a confession to illuminate the shadows, but Marcus remained tight-lipped. He felt more a victim of circumstance than a suspect, claiming innocence while revealing little of his own whereabouts on the night of Clara's disappearance. Next, the team turned their attention to a disheveled drifter spotted in the area around the time Clara went missing. His erratic behavior and disregard for societal norms made him an intriguing suspect, yet multiple interviews revealed nothing concrete. He was simply an unfortunate man caught in a storm, leaving behind no connections to Clara, aside from the time he spent wandering the streets. Despite sifting through hours of surveillance footage, the gaps in Clara's last hours remained painfully evident. A blurred figure passing through the periphery might once again point to a fleeting illusion. And as they pored over the digital threads of Clara's life, the researchers found only a few erratic digital footprints, mostly mundane chatter or awkward exchanges with peers. Without further evidence or direction, frustration mounted. Each dead end felt like a cruel joke played on those seeking justice for Clara. The air grew heavier with stagnation as the initial hope of resolution morphed into doubt, and the case began to wear on the team's resolve. A break in the case. A sense of despondency hung over the precinct. But the relentless pursuit of truth would soon shift the tide. It began with a cheaper local handyman named Jack Thompson had come forward, claiming to have noticed something unusual during his nightly rounds at the community center, which overlooked the beach where Clara's body was found. According to Jack, the night Clara vanished, he had been working late, repairing a broken light fixture. While fumbling with tools, he caught a glimpse of two figures arguing behind the center, shrouded in shadows. The conversation, hushed yet heated, piqued his curiosity, but he initially dismissed it as neighborhood drama. With the passing of time and the arrival of Clara's tragedy, those moments felt all the more significant, and a nagging guilt sparked inside him. Detectives wasted no time. They interviewed Jack further, urging him to recall more detail. Features flashed in his memory: the distinctive blue hoodie of one figure and the unmistakable silhouette of a woman. Jack could not confirm their identities, but he felt an undeniable sense of urgency to relay his observations. The detectives took the information seriously, assessing every lead, knowing this could be the shift they needed. Simultaneously, they decided to revisit Marcus Green, armed with the new details. His demeanor shifted as they pressed him about Clara's last known moments. The detectives presented the possibility that he may have been at the community center that night. His body language spoke volumes as he fidgeted nervously, sweat beginning to bead on his brow. The renewed energy in the investigation fueled hope regaining the momentum that had been lost. It finally seemed that the tangled threads of Clara's life would begin to entwine into a coherent narrative. Ultimately, the detectives were no longer chasing vague shadows. They were on the verge of uncovering the truth hidden in plain sight. The suspect. With the revelation of Jack Thompson weighing heavily in their minds, investigators honed in on Marcus Green, the estranged partner who had already emerged as a person of interest in Clara's case. The detectives organized a carefully orchestrated tactical plan, meticulously detailing background's history and the substance of Clara's relationship with Marcus. The volatile nature of their connection had created a tidal wave of passion and resentment, surfacing in weeks leading up to her death. Clara's friends had spoken of her fears surrounding Marcus's instabilities, emotional dynamics spun out of control when he felt her slipping away. It wasn't delusion, but a tangible tension etched in the memories of those close to her. As detectives approached Marcus, they went in with a new level of scrutiny. Inviting him to a secluded interview room at the station, they noted how he wore the same blue hoodie. Jack had described the serendipitous detail that sent chills through the room when the officers registered it. Marcus's nonchalant attitude felt jarring against the gravity of the situation. During the interrogation, he seemed to vacillate between charm and antagonism, his demeanor shifting subtly with each question. The detectives pressed him about the night in question, noting discrepancies in his account of his whereabouts. The longer they engaged him, the more he folded in on himself, fidgeting with his hands and glancing toward the door for an escape. As they continued to unravel the emotions that permeated his responses, Marcus became increasingly defensive. The conflict was palpable. Hay wanted to assert his innocence while the weight of insinuations loomed over him like a dark cloud. The detectives exchanged meaningful glances as they fed on the tension, thoroughly convinced they were pushing against the firm walls of a man who knew more than he let on. The time had come, they decided, to push harder and test the boundaries of his story. A necessary step to unveil the truth behind Clara's tragic fate. The trial. The courtroom buzzed with a simmering energy as the trial of Marcus Green began. The wooden paneling and high ceilings of the Ravenswood courthouse felt simultaneously intimidating and sanctuary-like, serving as a vessel for both justice and the heart-wrenching emotions this case had stirred within the community. Clara's family and friends filled the public gallery, their faces a mosaic of hope and despair as they awaited the day when the truth would finally emerge. Prosecutors laid the groundwork, presenting a compelling narrative of Clara's tragic last days, punctuated by Marcus's volatile behavior and what Jack Thompson had witnessed that fateful night. The timeline was meticulously crafted, the evidence of arguments, the pattern of emotional abuse, his conflicting alibis all woven together to create a tapestry of suspicion around him. Each piece of evidence hit the room like a sharp intake of breath, punctuated by the weight of Clara's absence. As the defense took its turn, Marcus sat stoically, draped in a composed facade. His legal team aimed to dismantle the prosecution's overzealous claims, arguing that circumstantial evidence could not carry the hefty weight of guilt. With fervor, they painted Marcus as a misunderstood man who had struggled with his demons, but had no motive to murder the woman he once loved. The courtroom felt tense as the defense maneuvered through the narrative, attempting to recast Marcus from suspect to victim of circumstance. Witnesses were called, presenting contrasting portraits of both Clara and Marcus that left the jury conflicted. Friends recounted moments of warmth and laughter shared between them, while others disclosed the alarmingly dark changes in Clara's demeanor, urging the jurors to consider the complexity of love intertwined with fear. Emotional testimonies filled the air, undulating like waves lapping against the courtroom walls. As closing arguments were made, the palpable tension reached a crescendo, and Clara's story hung in the balance, waiting for the jury to decide what had transpired in the shadows of that fateful night. The aftermath. The jury deliberated for what felt like an eternity. The weighty silence within the courtroom amplifying the tension that had long since permeated Ravenswood. Finally, the verdict was read. A collective breath was released, mingling with gasps of disbelief as anxiety turned to grief. Marcus Green was found guilty of second-degree murder, a decision that echoed through the hearts of all who had known Clara. With the ruling, the community fractured. Friends of Marcus could be seen shaking their heads, grappling with the depths of their grief, while a wave of relief coursed through Clara's family. Yet, amidst the emotional turmoil lay a pervasive unease. A lingering question hung in the air. Was justice truly served? Many felt as though Clara's death had unveiled the dark shadow of domestic violence, stirring conversations that rippled beyond the courtroom. In the days following the trial, Clara's memory became a focal point for change. A candlelight vigil was organized along the shoreline, where her life was cruelly extinguished. Community members gathered, lighting small flames as symbols of hope, resilience, and remembrance. Soft whispers filled the salty air as stories of Clara's laughter and compassion flowed like the tide. momentarily bridging the divide that had formed since her disappearance. Ravenswood worked to educate its community on the signs of emotional abuse and the vital importance of intervention. Workshops and support groups sprang up in town, aiming to foster healing while dismantling the shame and silence that had hovered like fog over the issue for far too long. Though justice had been served, the scars of loss brushed against the hearts of Clara's loved ones, an indelible mark on their souls that would beckon for remembrance. As time wore on, Clara's spirit lived on, breathing life into efforts that transformed a tragedy into a beacon of awareness for others navigating the stormy seas of love and violence. Reflection. As the ripples of Clara's story settled within the community of Ravenswood, life trudged forward. Yet, the imprint left by her tragic fate served as a catalyst for change, a reminder that shadows could conceal even the most vibrant light. A year had passed since the trial, and though the community had embraced a new chapter, the pain of losing Clara remained potent. Her friends often gathered at their favorite cafe to reflect on memories flooded with laughter, yet tinged with sorrow. Each shared recollection illuminated Clara's vivacious spirit, coupled with the dark realities of her struggles that they had previously overlooked. These discussions echoed reminders of the importance of vigilance, empathy, and open conversations about mental health. It became a collective mission. They vowed that Clara would not be just a name and a headline, but a spark for long-lasting transformation. In times of quiet reflection, the reciprocity of light and darkness played in the corners of minds. What would her life have been like had different choices unfolded? Aurora, one of her closest friends, began volunteering at local shelters dedicated to raising awareness about domestic violence and mental health, channeling her grief into action. The bond of friendship illuminated Clara's legacy, challenging each of them to cultivate a deeper connection with themselves and those around them. As seasons turned, the town learned to stitch together the jagged edges of their shared trauma, charting a course toward healing, love, and resilience, all sprouting from the roots of a tragedy far too deep for words, but unforgettable nonetheless.